The knock at the door came at exactly 12:03 a.m. Slow, deliberate, and heavy enough to make Jacob Carter's heart slam against his ribs. Midnight knocks never bring good news. Jacob was already awake. Single fathers rarely slept deeply. He had been sitting at the kitchen table in his small rental home in Columbus, Ohio, staring at a stack of unpaid medical bills and his daughter's elementary school tuition notice. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft breathing of 8-year-old Sophie asleep down the hallway. The knock came again. When Jacob opened the door, he found his boss, Victoria Hayes, standing under the yellow porch light. Her expensive coat looked out of place in his modest neighborhood. Her eyes were unreadable, almost wounded. "You're fired," she said flatly, and just like that, the ground beneath Jacob's life disappeared. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in stories that remind us how fragile life can be, take a moment right now to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them most. Jacob had known this moment might come. For months, Victoria had been sending signals he refused to see, lingering looks during meetings, invitations to late strategy dinners, a gentle touch on his arm that lasted a second too long. She was the regional director of the logistics firm where Jacob worked as an operations manager, smart, powerful, charismatic, and recently divorced. But Jacob had drawn a quiet line in his heart the day his wife Hannah died from a sudden aneurysm 2 years earlier. He had promised himself that Sophie would be his focus. No distractions. No complications. No blurred boundaries with a boss who signed his paycheck. So he kept things professional, polite, distant. He declined the dinners. He left meetings promptly. He redirected conversations back to quarterly numbers and shipment delays. He ignored the tension that built in the air. And tonight, that tension had followed him home. Victoria didn't step inside. She simply handed him a folded termination letter. Corporate restructuring, it read. Position eliminated, effective immediately. There was no anger in her voice, but there was something colder, something personal. Jacob didn't argue. Pride kept him still. Sophie was asleep. He couldn't afford a scene. He nodded, thanked her for the opportunity, and closed the door. When the latch clicked shut, he leaned his forehead against the wood and felt his chest tighten. He had $327 in his bank account. Rent was due in 5 days. Sophie's asthma medication refill was scheduled next week. He slid down to the floor and covered his face with his hands. In the weeks that followed, Columbus felt colder than usual. February winds whipped through the streets, matching the emptiness in Jacob's stomach. He applied everywhere: warehouses, grocery stores, delivery routes, night security shifts. Overqualified for some, underconnected for others, rejections piled up. He sold his television, then his watch, then his wedding ring, which he had kept on a chain around his neck. That hurt the most, not because of the gold, but because it felt like letting go of the last physical piece of Hannah. Sophie noticed the changes. Children always do. She stopped asking for snacks at the store. She pretended not to hear when the electricity flickered after Jacob paid only part of the bill. One night, Jacob found her in her room drawing a picture of their family, just the two of them. And above their heads she had written, "We're okay, Daddy." He broke down silently in the hallway. Meanwhile, rumors swirled about Victoria at the office. A coworker texted him that corporate had been auditing her decisions. Several sudden terminations had raised questions. Performance metrics were under scrutiny. Jacob tried not to think about her, but she thought about him. Victoria Hayes had built her career on control. She prided herself on never mixing emotion with authority. Yet Jacob's quiet integrity had unsettled her. He hadn't flattered her, hadn't taken advantage of her vulnerability after her divorce, hadn't leaned into the power imbalance. He had simply respected himself and her. When he rejected her invitations, she felt rejected not as a boss but as a woman, and in a moment of wounded pride, she had used the one weapon she had, her signature. But the satisfaction she expected never came. Instead, guilt crept in. Late at night, she replayed the look in Jacob's eyes when she handed him the letter. Not anger, not desperation, just disappointment, and something protective, as if he were shielding someone else from the fallout. It wasn't until she learned from HR that Jacob had listed only one dependent, an 8-year-old daughter, that the weight truly hit her. She began to dig into his file, performance reviews glowing, attendance nearly perfect, except for the week Hannah died, notes from supervisors describing him as steady, ethical, loyal. She realized she hadn't fired a problem employee. She had fired a good man. 3 weeks after that midnight knock, another storm rolled through Columbus. Snow fell thick and heavy, coating the city in white silence. Jacob's power had been shut off that afternoon. He had told Sophie it was a camping adventure and lit a few candles. They wore jackets inside. He heated canned soup over a small camping stove he kept from better days. Around 9 p.m., Sophie's breathing grew tight. The cold air triggered her asthma. Jacob searched frantically for the inhaler. Empty. Panic surged. The pharmacy was closed. The car had barely enough gas. He bundled Sophie in blankets and rushed her to the emergency room. As fate would have it, Victoria was there that same night. She had slipped on ice outside her upscale condo and fractured her wrist. Sitting in the waiting area, her arm in a temporary brace, she felt embarrassed and alone. Then she saw him. Jacob burst through the sliding doors carrying Sophie, his face pale with fear. He didn't see Victoria at first. He was too focused on his daughter's shallow breaths. Victoria stood slowly, watching as nurses took Sophie back. Jacob remained in the waiting room, hands trembling, eyes closed as if praying. For the first time, Victoria saw not an employee, but a father. She approached quietly and sat beside him. He looked up, shock flashing across his face. Neither spoke for a long moment. Finally, Victoria said she was sorry. Not corporate sorry, not strategic sorry. Human sorry. Jacob didn't respond immediately. He was too tired for anger, too worn down for pride. He told her about the power shutoff, the inhaler, the job search. He didn't accuse her. He didn't beg. He simply stated facts, like he was reporting shipment delays in a meeting. And something inside Victoria broke. The doctor soon returned with good news. Sophie was stable. They administered treatment in time. Relief flooded Jacob's body. Victoria watched him exhale like a man given back his world. The next morning, before sunrise, Victoria made calls. She contacted corporate, admitted to mishandling personnel decisions, and requested immediate review. She reinstated Jacob's position with back pay. She also approved an emergency employee hardship fund, something she had previously dismissed as unnecessary, but she didn't stop there. She showed up at Jacob's house again. This time it wasn't midnight, it was morning. And she wasn't holding a termination letter. She was holding a folder and a quiet humility. She told him his job was restored, benefits active immediately, back pay deposited. She also offered a formal apology, not just privately, but in writing. Jacob listened carefully. Trust wasn't rebuilt in a sentence, but he saw something different in her posture. The sharp edges were gone. He accepted the job, not because he forgave instantly, but because Sophie deserved stability. Over the months that followed, Victoria changed. She implemented strict ethical boundaries, created transparent HR channels, sought mentorship. She no longer blurred personal loneliness with professional authority. Jacob returned to work, but with new strength. He no longer felt powerless. He knew what he had survived. One afternoon, months later, Victoria visited the operations floor. She saw Jacob laughing with coworkers, steady as ever. Sophie's picture was taped to his desk. Victoria realized something profound. Power can take away a paycheck, but integrity builds a legacy. Before we close, if this story touched your heart in any way, if you've ever faced injustice, hardship, or a moment that tested your character, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe for more stories that restore faith in humanity. And here's a special request. Comment the word integrity below if you believe doing the right thing still matters, even when no one is watching. That winter in Columbus taught two people very different lessons. Jacob learned that even when life knocks at midnight with loss, dignity is something no one can fire. And Victoria learned that sometimes the person you think you have power over is actually the one holding up a mirror to your soul. Because in the end, it wasn't the termination letter that defined that night. It was what each of them chose to become after it.